Hey everybody, welcome to this bonus episode of the Sorting Hat podcast based off of our Bill of Rights episode running super long. And,
take that in parts.
Yeah, and wanting to still tell you this kind of nutso-butso story. It's just myself and Andrew Tippin.
Hi again.
Our guest.
I know you're sick of me by now.
No. You're a wonderful dude.
Oh, thank you.
Now just sipping a Corona as we record this.
I party the extreme life. I'm living my best life, I guess is the phrase.
Yes. So yeah, we'll just dive into this insane trial that I sat in on.
You guys are in for the treatiest of treats. It's probably the craziest, silliest legal trial story I've heard, and I'm in law school.
Right. So the basic premise as I set up in the episode of the Bill of Rights was I was on jury for figuring out the damages of this woman who was admittedly slapped once or twice by her husband. For those of you also, just because I might as well tangent right out of the gate, if you have not ever sat on a jury and have shirked that responsibility, I would actually encourage you all to do it because it is fascinating.
I am jealous because I will never probably sit on a jury again.
Right.
I've never actually done it yet, which sucks. I've wanted to.
It's crazy in that you are not expecting the level of questions which are being asked for you. And it completely makes sense. So the lawyers are standing up and asking you various questions to determine whether or not you're fair. And of course, they're also going to be asking you questions based on your, I guess, moral fluidity would be the appropriate terms. So they're like, an example of this, and all of them are hard-hitting questions. So an example of this going to an extreme would be, do you support assisted suicide? Which is a tough question for most people, usually eliciting a black or white response of, yes, I support it, no, I don't. Right. To the person who says, no, they don't support it, you aren't off the hook at this point. And this is assuming that in this trial, assisted suicide is probably part of it.
It's going to be a thing, yeah.
So they're asking that question, you say no. The prosecutor or defense then goes, all right, you don't support it. Now, what if your mother is in a great amount of pain and she is looking to commit suicide, but only you are able, because she is in a vegetated state, are the one who can pull the plug?
All your siblings are dead.
Yeah. Do you think in that situation, assisted suicide is permissible? And you immediately are like, oh, fuck, this got a lot deeper and dark. You really wind up examining yourself a lot.
What if your mom had carnivorous brainworms and she wanted you to end her life before the brainworms ate her brain? Would you say yes?
Yeah, or just it's insane stuff like that where you're like, oh my God, I wasn't I just thought you'd be like, are you racist? And you're like, yes, I'm racist.
Are you racist, sir?
And then they're like, all right, well, you can go, to those people who are trying to get out of it. But they put you in these moral swamps anyway. So
yeah,
I wound up actually being questioned because they asked the question of do you believe that there is an amount that is too much? And I was like, yeah, I think
everyone should say yes to that question.
And they were to
$1 billion.
Well, no, and they were saying $1 million, is $1 million too much? Is $2 million too much? And I was like, I think $1 million's too much. And they were like, well, what if this person suffered deep psychological trauma? And I was like, I guess, but and I've gone to therapy before, and I'm just doing the numbers in my head. I'm like, you have to be going to therapy for a really fucking long time for that number to even get close to $1 million.
It depends on the circumstances.
Right.
This is not a car crash. This is a woman was slapped.
Right.
theoretically slapped.
Yeah. She was struck. There's debate whether she was punched or slapped. But anyway,
right. She was struck. We're not talking about like a daughter suing because her mother was chopped into bits. And so like to say $1 million is you got to have the context for that. For Michael to say $1 million seems like too much.
Right. And
the psychological damage for somebody like punching you $1 million.
And it's also worth noting those questions happen before you know any of the context of what the court case is about.
But have they told you it's about assault? They've told
us it's about assault, but we don't know to what degree.
How much it is.
Right.
Yeah. This is just... His whole trial was just for the damages, the money phase.
Right.
Because they already admitted. The guy already stood up and was like, I did this.
The guy said, I did this. And like both he and his defense attorney were like, it is wrong to ever strike anybody. Like 100%. We are looking to give this person money, but the money that they are asking is an egregious amount.
I should not have slapped her, but I should not have to pay $1 million.
Right. And the number that they were asking was, which we found out at the end of the trial, was $1.5 million.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah. So anyway, getting into the actual context of the trial. Very sorry that, we're tangenty because that's just how we are.
This whole bonus podcast is a tangent.
Right. So there is this couple in, I believe, Hermosa or Redondo Beach.
Of course.
Somewhat bougie white couple and their 3 kids. Because they are bougie white people, they go on vacation and ski. Some competitive skiing. While they're up in Big Bear, this couple and their kids meet an Austrian ski instructor named Balthazar Meisel. I remember that.
It's a trick.
I remember that name because Balthazar Meisel is an incredible name.
Yeah. Like he sounds like a billionaire who like drops people through a trap door.
Like if you found out that the next James Bond villain was named Balthazar Meisel, you would not bat an eye.
You'd be like, oh yes, he's a crazy German. Of course.
Right. Yeah. So this couple, and I can't disclose all the names and everything because it's now public record, right? That's how that all works.
It's your once it's happened. So
it's also worth noting.
You can look all of it.
You can look up all. I think you can look up the stenography reports and everything.
Yeah,
right?
It's a little more annoying for you to request like transcripts of it. But
that said, also in this, so the couple's last name is Gooch.
I forgot that part.
So, and it is also worth noting.
I've said it 1 million times.
And it is also worth noting that because this trial, which should not have lasted 6 days, but did.
I forgot a lot of these details that it was 6 days long.
Yeah, it shouldn't have lasted that long, but it did. And so
like 4 hours.
For the like 6 hours that we were there every day, for the first 3 days or so, they kept saying Mr. and Mrs. Gooch. And it wasn't until
the Gooches.
Yeah, the Gooches. It wasn't until like the 5th or 6th day, or 4th or 5th or 6th day.
I'm sorry, you just heard a huge noise and that was the microphone falling onto my shoulder because I'm a goon.
So it wasn't until the like midway through the trial that they stopped referring to them as Mr. and Mrs. Gooch and started just referring to them by their first name because one of them must have realized like, oh, Gooch.
I wonder if a juror or somebody was like, like they passed a note, it was like, everyone on the jury is laughing every time you say Gooch. And they're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. Like,
oh, damn.
It was just like, I felt crazy because I kept being like, what? Like for like the first few times that it happened. And then I became a little bit numb to it, but
send a letter to the judge being like, look, their names are butts. You have to tell the lawyers to stop.
So anyway, the Gooches meet Balthazar Meisel. The Gooches meet Balthazar Meisel.
Scooby-Doo episode.
In Big Bear. And they're really taken with him. And so they decide, or they discuss the possibility, because he is a ski instructor, that they should, I believe it's the the Alps. Like he does a summer program in the Alps or something like that.
You said it's like from wherever his country is in like Austria or something.
Yeah,
right?
It's been almost a year or so.
When you told me the story, you said it was like in his home country, which was like in Austria or Germany or something.
Yeah. And so it's like they do ski practice there. They should.
Or was he Swiss? No, I don't. It doesn't really matter.
The
country doesn't, but it's a foreign country.
Right. It's a foreign country. That part matters. So they're like, we should do this and we should have our kids go over. So the wife and two of the kids go over to check it out. And the wife comes back and is like, with the kids and is like, husband, Mr. Gooch, we need to do this. We need to send our kids.
How long was she gone again?
I believe she was gone.
Wasn't it like a week?
Yeah, it was like a week or 2 weeks.
No, the first time I think because there's a separate time.
Yeah.
So I think it's the first time it's like a week.
The first time it's like a week. Then the next time she's like, we should do this. We should do it. And they're like, okay, well, we need like our kids need to finish school or something to that effect because it's like, you know, they met them in March or April or no, early February and then March or April, something like that.
Because they would have to have met them like in winter during the ski season.
So the intent was for them to enroll or to go in like September.
Right.
But then the wife was like, no, we need to go sooner because I need to enroll the kids in school.
If that's where we are, then the week wasn't it? It was a week, and then she called and was like, "We need to stay an extra week." Oh, that's no. Later?
That's so basically
because from what I remember, the school thing was like
right. But that was an argument that she made for them going earlier. Was she's like, we want them to be enrolled in school, and we want them to like have a better grasp of the language, so we should go over as early as June. Mm-hmm. And the husband was like, that seems weird. Or like early summer. And he's like, that seems weird, but I love you. She had been also, worth noting, experiencing depressive states, and he was trying to make her happy. So he said, yes, you and our oldest kid, I believe, can go over to Austria and you're going to do that and it'll be fine. At the same time, there was like a family gathering that was going on that they all, I want to say Kansas, somewhere in the middle of the country that the family normally partook in, but it was just him and the two youngest kids because the wife decided we need to go right now. And it kept being increasingly pushed forward. And also there then came the issue of, oh yeah, we need to sell our home and just move
This was after they went for like a month, right?
He never went.
No. The wife and the kid went for like a month, and didn't they call and was like, we need to sell the house?
Right. Yeah.
So she's not in the country, and she's calling him and being like,
right. They were thinking, if I recall correctly, they were thinking about like subletting or something like that, to, you know, like accrue some form of payment while
the husband and the other kids are still in the house, and she's like, we need to do this.
Yeah. They've been like boxing it up, but she's like, no, we need to pull the trigger on this right now.
And to get you on it, like they've been texting, and every time he texts
every
her,
time he texts
important.
her after this like initial time, communication is questionable at best. Like it's pretty infrequent on her end, and whenever she does respond, it's revolving around some sort of money-based thing or selling the house or Balthazar is going to need a payment of this, because it is also worth noting the wife and the kid are not staying in like a hotel or staying at
a reasonable.
They're staying at the ski instructor's home. Like they're renting a floor
because that's a normal thing that you do
and living with his family.
Wait, what? I don't know that you told me this. What family did he have?
He had like multiple kids, like,
and a wife who lived or was he?
No,
divorced?
I believe he was divorced.
Okay.
I'm not sure if any of you can see where this might be heading.
And the content of the husband's texts from what you told me was all like, can I talk to the kids? Like, how is the kid doing? Like,
right. I'd like to talk with our kid. Or our kids would like to talk to you. When can you FaceTime? Any of that. And it was always like, oh, can't right now, going to later. By the way, we're going to need this check. By the way, this person's coming by. At some point also, it was introduced the idea of buying a home in Austria, where she was.
Yeah, because that makes sense with competitive skiing. Great.
Yeah. So
there's no competitive skiing. I mean, America.
Just the whole thing. And like, I'm trying to tell you the abridged version, and it also is tracking a little bit in the fact that it's been a year, so I've forgotten a little bit.
That's why, by the way, people, I did not experience this, but Michael told me like a few weeks after. So I'm injecting to try and jog his memory or clarify my memory of what he told me.
It's also worth noting, I did, if any of you are familiar with the Super Beard Bros, which is a Let's Play channel on YouTube, I jumped into one of them when they were playing Mario Maker and like told all of this like right after the court decision. So
I'm going to have to listen to that.
Yeah, it's much more lucid at that point, and I'm sure I'm making a ton of errors. But so the husband at that point, somewhere in July, it's end of July, early August. I remember that much. He suddenly is like, this is crazy.
They've been gone. The wife and the kid have been gone for like a month.
Yes.
Now.
And the husband is like, this is crazy. I'm going to Austria. We're going to Austria. Let's go.
And he's texting her like, I should go. And she's like, no, right?
He tells her that he's coming. When he arrives, there's nobody to pick him up at the airport. There's like, and when he shows up at the ski instructor's house, the ski instructor seems very surprised.
Doesn't he spends an entire day lost?
Oh, yes. He spends an entire day lost with his kids in a foreign country where he does not speak the language. It is worth noting the wife speaks the language. So.
Oh, yeah, she does.
They finally arrive at the ski instructor's house. The ski instructor is surprised that the husband is there, which in and of itself is like, wait, so my wife didn't tell you that I was coming?
The person whose house this is doesn't know.
So they're staying over. They're doing like a barbecue or something like that with the whole like both families. And the husband the ski instructor pulls the husband aside and is like, hey, I just thought I should tell you, your wife and I have feelings for one another. And the husband is like, oh, because when he had talked to his wife earlier that day, was like, hey, you've been kind of distant. Is everything okay? And she was like, yeah, I'm just tired because Balthazar and I spent all of yesterday on a lake not answering your texts. So he then goes straight to the wife after hearing this from Balthazar and is like, hey, I would love an explanation. And she's like, wait, before we get that explanation, let me talk to Balthazar. And they talk privately.
Why would you ever say yes? And you'd be like, why? No.
And then
he told me.
Then Balthazar comes back and is like, oh no, you misunderstand.
You misunderstood my perfect English.
Like I said, we have feelings for one another in like a mutual love of skiing. Like
I guess I forgot how English people talk when they say it.
So he's like, dodge this. And at this point, the husband is just like, I now would just like confirmation from my wife on all of this. The long and short, because now we're just getting into the like minutia of
this is the funny part.
It's funny, but also sad. Like the husband has to. So the husband is a cyclist, and like part of the training is the kids cycling, and so the wife is driving the van. Thing. Balthazar is not in the van.
He's cycling.
He's cycling. And the husband is also cycling with the kids.
They're all outing.
In a group doing this activity. And all the husband has to do the whole time is like try to work through
while they're cycling through the mountains.
What the hell is going on? And so that happens. There's another evening where
they end up. Yeah,
I'm gonna sneeze. There we go.
Bless you.
The
Bless
second
you
one
again.
All right. So there's another night where
they're like out drinking afterwards.
Well, that's right before the slap. But
okay.
there are two nights that are instances where the husband, like in the trial, the husband is like, I wanted to have sex with my wife that night because I hadn't seen her in a long time. And she was like, all right with that. But then when the wife came up on the stand, it was like rape allegations, basically. Like that was the other thing, was like the prosecutor was looking to paint the husband as like erratic, angry, abusive, rapist, like all of that. And then they called the wife's brother to the stand, and he just tore into him for physical abuse. But which was crazy was that never, when he was on the stand, did he mention any of these.
You forgot to mention he showed up in the wife's brother came to Austria and was picked up by
the husband after the events. Sorry, we're getting all out of order. Yeah. We're getting all out of order. But all right. So God, it's like it's a jumbled mess.
So they have these nights where the husband's like claims like his wife he had sex, and they're probably having like weird outings with Balthazar too at this point.
Yeah,
right?
Like none of it is comfortable in any sense. And there was an instance where he arrived in one of the hotel rooms that they were staying on their like cycling trip, and she was texting, but the minute that he like reached for the phone, she like pulled it away to make sure that he couldn't see anything. It's also worth noting throughout all of this, he was asking for the kids' passports and she was not giving them to him.
And he was, and from what Michael told me before, they were like going out to dinner and she would be like cozying up to Balthazar and be like
in front of the kids. That's right. Like the main catalyst for the final event. 'Cause they get to, I believe it was Melk. Yeah. I'm remembering more and more now. So they arrived in this small town of Melk, and
which is how some people pronounce the word milk, the stuff that comes from a cow.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the name of the town. So they're in this town. They go out to this dinner. She's needlessly flirty and like a little bit drunk, and he admittedly is drinking too, because she's all but admitted that she has feelings, but she still has not admitted that anything has been happening with Balthazar. The kids are noticeably upset by this, despite the fact, like the youngest, who I believe is like 5, is like cool with Balthazar because they don't realize what's going on. But like the one who's like 9 is pretty attuned and frustrated and upset by this. So the husband's just like, hey, honey, can you minimize the like pleasantries with Balthazar right in front of the kid? So they get drunk. They're walking up. Before they go back to the hotel, Balthazar is like, hey, we can just stay out. And the husband's like, no, we're all going home as a family, or back to the hotel as a family. And it's at that point that the wife is like, yup, absolutely. And then is like, I just need to use the restroom.
Didn't the wife argue to go out, like when he was like, come out with us, and she was like, yeah, let's
do it. And the husband was like, no, we're gonna stay in like a family.
Right.
Then right as they like get into the lobby, she's like, I need to use the restroom real fast in the downstairs lobby. And then the oldest kid sees that
the husband goes up.
Yeah.
And then upstairs.
And then the oldest kid goes, yeah. Sees that
the oldest kid is down in the lobby where the mom went to the bathroom. The husband has taken the other kids and is up in his room.
The oldest kid sees the mom start to leave, and then he runs upstairs and is like, Dad, mom's trying to go out with Balthazar. He runs down, like curses her out, like outside of the hotel. And as he's like kind of forcibly, and he admits to that, like pulling her back into the hotel, and she goes into the elevator after like this berating, and then she says, presumably in the defense's narrative,
as the doors are closing,
so it's super dramatic. But I love him. The doors start to close. He's shell-shocked. He runs up 2 flights of stairs to beat the elevator because the elevator's pretty slow. The doors open, and then he hits her twice. As to whether or not these are open face, open palm slaps strikes, or fists, punches is helpful in the fact of what the actual case is looking to solve, which is damages. But the thing around all of this,
and just in case you're wondering if it's possible to beat an elevator up 2 flights of stairs, it definitely is.
Oh yeah, I mean, I run up 3 flights of stairs at my apartment building and beat my roommate frequently. So that it's not even the question of like, could he make it? We know he did.
Right. Just to make sure people don't think that like the defense side is completely like a lie.
Oh, but in both sides they said that. Anyway, so then there's just, I mean, the trial was insane because they flew both the husband and wife who ran that hotel in Melk to the trial to corroborate the damage to the wife's face, which it's like if you're struck in the nose and you get a nosebleed, it bleeds a lot, but that doesn't show medical
injury. It just shows that you had blood.
The thing that was so utterly insane, in addition to the fact that all of this played like a soap opera, the way that it was presented, and at least as far as theatrics go, I have to give the defense attorney like high marks.
By the way, my initial reaction to being told this story, and if you've never seen an episode of Columbo, watch one, but that this is the freaking like plot, like this should be the plot of a Columbo episode. And why I find this so funny is because the wife's alive and not dead, because that's how, if this were a Columbo episode, the husband would have killed the wife and then there would be this whole investigation, and at the very end they'd find out the husband like buried his wife in the snow, and he'd be like, one more thing. Like, was your wife wearing shoes? And then they like, but like,
right.
It's just a lawsuit about.
Well, yeah, exactly. So the thing that would help them unequivocally determine damages would be a medical record.
And by the way, if you're ever going to sue someone and you're asking for $1 million in damages, you better fucking have some papers to show.
Yeah. They had 0 medical records. Not from when she was admitted to the hospital that night, not from any time that she might have needed physical therapy or surgery costs to any damages to her face. There were no, like the most we got were psychological diagnostics, but even then the person that they brought in was not for the, I don't know if it was for like psychological trauma or like this person dealt in PTSD, not domestic abuse or something. Like they were dealing in the wrong division of what they were dealing with. Or that's right. They were a relationship psychologist. They were like a couples therapist,
not like a psychotherapist,
not like PTSD analyst or anything like that.
Not someone who routinely actually analyzes like.
So all of their key witnesses for the prosecution were not like specialists in their field. And the fact that we had translators brought in twice because both the husband and the wife told us there was a lot of blood. Like it was an utterly insane courtroom experience that the one thing that I will say was that the judge was so incredibly helpful because there were constant objections from both the prosecution and the defense.
Not surprising,
no. But the judge was taking the time to explain like what these objections actually meant.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I just walked away with a great appreciation for both the judge, who I don't remember the judge's last name, but I remember the judge's first name was Laura, Laura something. But good on that judge in Torrance Superior Court.
I think you need to describe your jury experience, but first you should describe the conduct of the attorneys. Because when you described to me the closing argument of we didn't get to the brother. We didn't get to the brother. So part of the witness against the husband was she brought the brother, and why the brother was relevant was because
the brother showed up after the fact. Like literally what happened was he strikes the wife. The wife is taken away by the two owners of the hospital owners of the hotel to the hospital. And then the husband calls the brother and is like, I just struck your sister. Oh my God. And the brother is like, I'm going to get on a flight right now and come. And the husband picks him up at the airport.
The husband
picks him up at the airport and is then subsequently cursed out the entire car ride to take the brother to the hospital. At which point also still doesn't have the passports. Still does not have the kids' passports.
Husband doesn't have the passports.
Because what at least is asserted by the defense, and honestly, like all of this narrative doesn't matter because we never got medical records. Like he could have told the most insane story about how she's a fire-breathing demon.
She still has to prove.
The fact that there were no medical records, like we didn't need all of that story.
By the way, for those of you who don't know how it works, as the plaintiff, the wife has the obligation,
the burden
to
of
prove what her damages are.
Right.
Even though he admitted he struck her, as the plaintiff, it's her job to prove that she deserves $1 million worth of $1.5 million.
Yeah. And the defense, even in their closing argument, said, we recognize that the wife is owed money. We recognize that $30,000 or even $40,000 would be substantial for like her long-standing damages. Like, and
back to the brother for a second, because I think that's it's telling.
Which part?
The part where the fact that she had been texting with the brother about not wanting to have sex with the husband.
Oh, no. That was a different person. That was a friend of hers.
A friend.
Yeah.
But also he's relevant to the whole rape allegations thing.
Yeah.
She's like, why are you mad at me? He says to the brother.
Right. Like the whole time that the brother was brought onto the stand was just saying you don't treat women like that. You don't hit women.
Which we agree with, both of us.
Which everybody was like, yeah, that's not okay. But then the defense attorney after the brother, and like, this is like shifty, shady shit. And he saved it for the closing arguments, but he was like, isn't it interesting that the brother never alluded to the fact that like his sister was claiming sexual assault?
And didn't she say like she talked and she's like, there was a thing where you said, did you talk to your brother about the incident? And
right. Yeah.
Yes, I talked to my brother about the incident.
Yeah.
But apparently never mentioned.
Right. Which is like a huge deal. But it
just comes out at
out during her cross-examination or during her time on the stand, which it's also worth noting, guys, I think it was the wife spent 6 hours on the stand and the husband was on there for like 4.5 or either of those. It was like, we spent a whole day on one and like a day and a half for the other. It was utterly insane how long it was spent. But the narrative that the defense attorney was looking to play, and it really has no bearing other than like to maybe, I suppose, play on the emotions of, wow, she was crazy manipulative. But like none of us, when we came into deliberation, even were like,
about that.
We were like, yeah, that's a crazy story, but like also she doesn't have any medical evidence. But anyway, the narrative that they were painting was the wife had an affair with Balthazar. They then the whole purpose of them buying a house, selling a house, and her showing up early was so once the husband arrived in Austria, she would file for divorce. And because the husband did not have a home in America, but they did have a place here, which she was one of the signers for.
And the kids would be registered in Austrian schools.
they inherently would then allow for the kids in the separation to go with the wife. So she could effectively have her cake and eat it too, and the husband would be left with nothing.
I think Michael also forgot to mention that various times when she was texting him when he was in the States was about like, Balthazar needs to update his house. So we need some money for this, and I need some money for a car. And he's like, wait, why do you need to buy a car?
Yeah. It was an absolutely insane court experience. But then, so we get to the closing arguments. I'm so sorry that I'm going all over the place, people. No, my mind is a jumble. But
you will be pleased.
So the way that the prosecutor had been conducting himself, the
plaintiff's attorney, prosecutor,
was he tended to be kind of like a turtle that was like shrunken. So he was like hunched forward, like a turtle and a vulture. So he was hunched forward and always had his arms crossed whenever he wasn't standing. Whenever he was standing, he was doing the thing that I discussed on the podcast, which was sort of needling questions of like...
That's twice.
You've knocked over that microphone multiple times.
I'm the worst.
So he would be like, isn't it true that Mr. Gooch was aggressive? True? So like that already was needling and aggressive. But then the amount of challenges or objections, despite the fact that the way he was conducting himself, like the judge gave him multiple points where they were like, you've already stated,
right.
I'm forgetting the one where it's like not relevant. He was claiming irrelevance to like everything. For starters,
right?
It was just like, objection, Your Honor, irrelevant. And she was like, no, it is, because this is the narrative that's being painted. Like, we're telling the story. He's just asking yes or no questions.
He probably got a few asked and answers.
Yeah.
Too, I would bet.
Asked and answers happened a lot. Yeah. But so he comes to his closing arguments. And now this is when he just throws the kitchen sink at the jurors, because he goes, ladies and gentlemen, this is America. And he puts down on the slide projector the American flag. He says, this is America. And then he goes, this is not Afghanistan. And he slides the Afghani flag on.
Jesus Christ.
And then proceeds to make the argument that if we do not punish this man for full damages of $1.5 million, we are stating to our society that what is stopping a man from beating his wife, ripping her arm off, and killing her with that dismembered limb. Like, it is a level of slippery slope argument, which I have never, like, I did debate. I did debate for a year at community college and had to witness tons of arguments. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that a cheating wife getting struck in Austria would result in the entire American society to crumble to wife beating crazy
murder.
Like it was such a leap. It was such an utterly insane leap. And then, I mean, he preyed upon, like, he cited a Bible verse. It was just like, it was insane. It was very clear that they had nothing. The fact that they didn't provide any medical evidence is astonishing to me. And the fact that then they decided to draw out this trial for 6 days is like a next level crime in and of itself. Then the defense gets up and is just like, here's all the actual evidence that they have. And he presented a binder and then he opened it and it was empty. It was like it was needlessly presentational and like jokey.
Well, that's what closing arguments are.
Yeah, it was very showy. I mean, so then we just got into...
But probably coming after the, this is America, here's the flag, here's another flag, murder wives with their dismembered arms, it probably was very
the brevity was welcome. And in general, like the way that the defense attorney carried himself was amicable. Like even when he was asking hard-hitting questions, he wasn't being a dick about it. Mm-hmm. He was just like, yes or no. Here's whatever the question is.
Right.
Yes or no. And that's also like what I came to take away from it is like everybody wants to give clarifiers, which I definitely live in that world of. I definitely exist with everything has a gray area, but in the court of law, it's a yes or no question.
Yes.
And that makes for the questioning to be incredibly pointed because it's effectively one of those Venn diagrams of like, if yes, then we go to these questions, which are yes or no, which we're all going to try to cycle back to this one question that we're looking for an answer to.
Right.
It's some nutty stuff. Like the mind games are high level in play. So then we got to deliberation and it was this thing where we all looked to it and we're like, she provided nothing. Some of the jurors were like, we should give her nothing. We ultimately came to a little.
That's how you know that was really a shit show when there are people who are like, they admitted they hit her, but she shouldn't get anything.
Right. Like we eventually landed, I think, just below the number that the defense had even offered was like reasonable. I think
the quote you gave me from that like Ukrainian woman or whatever was like my favorite.
Oh God. I
remember it, but it was,
I mean, I just know she was like, but she will get nothing.
Yeah, it was like, I have been a victim of domestic abuse.
Right. Yeah,
I know what it feels like, but this bitch will get nothing.
It was crazy. There were 3 jurors, I believe, who had been victims or had been like tangentially connected to a victim of domestic abuse. And so the fact that they were so staunchly opposed to this person was crazy.
I can see it because if it was as like slapshot as you said, they were probably like, that's offensive to people who are actually victims. Who the court system doesn't always protect, and you're
right.
Like, and this person is like playing themselves out.
Yeah, I think they definitely were put off by the fact that she was playing so much a victim when it seems like you came from a very privileged place already, and then you're asking for such an egregious amount. If they had been asking for probably the amount that the defense attorney had quoted, there probably might not have been even a trial.
There wouldn't. I guarantee you. There wouldn't. The only reason they went to trial is because they were like, look, we're going to admit that the husband is upset. He's sad. He's upset that he did it. He wants to pay for the things. But then they're like, it has to be $1 million. And they're like, no, that's crazy. And they're like, no, it has to be $1.5 million. And he's like, no, like 30 grand. Where's your hospital bills? And they were like, no, $1.5 million. And they're like, well, I guess we're going to trial. That's what happened.
The craziest part is that was like one of 3 concurrent trials that have been going on.
Because they were hoping that the passions of the jury would be inflamed and they could get some huge reward. But it probably would have been overturned.
It's a crazy thing. It is a crazy, crazy thing.
The judge probably would have appealed the award and they would have won an appeal on the award.
I mean, I think I've gone through all the major nuts and bolts of this one.
The funniest stuff is past, but
it's a crazy thing. And I will say there's a lot to learn by sitting in on a trial. As crazy or not as this, I hope, obviously, if you are sitting on a trial, that it's something that is
boring,
like pretty
pedestrian,
dull and not scary. Because definitely, like walking away the first day, I was like, "Oh man, this is some heavy stuff." But as it dragged on, it just became farcical. Almost.
They should have kept it to a day.
They really should have. But yeah, so that concludes this bonus episode of the Bill of Rights, where I just discussed nothing pertaining to the Bill of Rights, because it certainly wasn't a speedy trial.
No, it wasn't.
And I'd love to thank Andrew Tippin for sticking around and joining me in this.
I'd love to say you're welcome, and I will. You're welcome.
Thank you. You can follow Andrew Tippin on Twitter at ALF Tippin, correct?
Yes.
And you can follow me at Belated Media. And you can certainly write in if you have any crazy trial stories at sortinghatpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to your listening.
But before you email, sort your trial.
Yeah.
You got to sort your trial into a house before he'll read it.
Gosh, I don't even know what, like, the core of mine might be a Slytherin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like,
the whole reason that trial happened was to inflame passions of a jury to get more money.
It was a Slytherin. It's sorted. Goodbye, everybody.